Going on long road trips to places like Florida made me want to hook up with good-looking women. I've always wanted to hook up with a really good-looking girl. And on top of that, I've never really gotten laid that much compared to most guys, and I haven't gotten laid in a long time. And my curiosity started to rise. I felt like if I did get a chance to get laid with someone, especially someone really good looking, the feeling I would get, that I would imagine, was so great I couldn't even imagine how great it would even be. And that really made me want to enjoy it. On top of that, with the thought of blasting music and experiencing such gratitude after having such an experience and appreciate it in a place like Florida would be extremely intense. I started wanting to hook up with someone really bad. I started going to clubs every weekend to try to dance with girls and hopefully, if I'm lucky, take them home. I've always had social skills have always been tough. I have a hard time starting conversations with people. Not only I'm shy and I get nervous, but it's hard starting a conversation in spite of the tips and the things that I've learned to help improve it over the years. Not only it's hard to initiate conversations, but keeping a conversation is always hard too. I have unusual interests, and sometimes it's hard to find common interests. And it's just hard to simply think of things to say to keep a conversation going. And talking with a female, I find, is even harder. I, however, felt like if I went to a club and danced with some woman, that would make the chances of hooking up with someone easier. So every weekend, I went to the club, and I tried to dance with girls and hopefully take one home. I felt like going to a club would make my social difficulties easier because I would be dancing instead. I went to the clubs religiously, but never succeeded on hooking up with anybody. I often went on Fridays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I wasn't a very good dancer at first, but I observed everybody else and watched how they dance, and I mimicked their moves. I tried practice dancing at home and listened to music and looked at myself in the mirror. I felt like I wasn't really improving on dancing very well, and it was sometimes annoying. But once the year went through and got later in the year, I did start to get a little better at dancing. However, I still left the clubs feeling upset because I felt like I couldn't get laid because of my social struggles. I often also got upset that I still haven't really made any friends yet. I often told everybody at Unity Church that I wanted to find friends. They were pretty understanding, but they couldn't really help me because they were much older than me and they had busy lives. I went up to Michigan that spring and I hung out with my friends up in Michigan and of course had a really awesome time. But I hung out with Dave Boucher and we had fun hanging out. And however, one night I was really sad and I told him, I hate not having friends in South Carolina. It really bothers me. And I also told him that it also bothers me that I don't ever get laid and I want to get laid bad and I haven't. I think sometimes it's unfair that a lot of guys do get laid. I think some guys don't realize I think a lot of guys take it for granted and they don't realize what a wonderful opportunity it is to hook up with a girl. And I equally think a lot of people take it for granted about how wonderful it is to have friends. Especially making friends is being something that isn't that hard compared to what it is like with me. I think friendships are very special. I think friendships bring the most excitement more than almost anything. And I just hope soon that I would eventually make a few friends, even if it's just one friend. I think that would be more amazing than pretty much anything I can imagine. That and getting laid. So I prayed and just continued to hope that I would so I continued to try to work on my social skills, and I continue to try to just go to different places and try to find people. One day one day I went to the Reiki clinic. I asked a Reiki practitioner to set me Reiki and sent the intent of me finding a girlfriend and also finding a friend. Two people actually worked on me. I felt I was lucky. A lot of times when you have two Reiki practitioners, the healing is even better and it's more amazing. I asked one person to set the intent of having me find a girlfriend and hopefully getting laid too. And then the other person to help me find some friends. The guy who sent me Reiki, who sent the intent, my friend, said that I told him that I was desperately trying to find a friendship. When he gave me Reiki, he saw a vision. He had a vision of me hanging out with him and all of his friends that he had. He decided to invite me over his house the next day, and I instantly became friends with him. I was extremely happy to have a friend now. At that point, at that point, I used to come over his house all the time. He was a chef, and he made organic food. I used to come over and help him cook. He owned his own business where he made organic food and sold organic food. Even going over there was kind of like work, but I didn't mind it. It was still the best that it was still like hanging out with friends anyway. At his house, I also met one of his roommates. I started meeting more friends as a result of meeting Ken. I met a girl named Ella Cara and a few other people I saw at Unity Church that knew him. I was so excited. I started hanging out at Ken's house more often with some of his other people. His roommate, Ella Cara, and some of their other friends that often went to Unity Church too. We often talked about spiritual stuff. I was really happy and felt like I was finally not only had friends, but as a bonus, people that actually I felt I could relate to on a spiritual level. And that was really amazing. I felt like not only I had friends, but I felt like that wish I had in Michigan was finally getting answered. We not only talked about spiritual stuff, we also sang Hindu chants, we meditated, and we even went on a trip to see a spiritual master. I felt like I was part of a family. I started to really like Ken's roommate. I thought she was extraordinary and beautiful on many levels. We started hanging out a lot. We went to a couple of pubs and watched catchy live bands. Most of the time we went to the clubs though. We went because she wanted to try to. Most of the times when I went with her to the pubs, it was actually because there was guys that she liked that she wanted to see if she could try to maybe get on a date with. But I didn't care. I was happy to hang out with her. One day we decided to take one day during the beginning of the summer, we decided to take a long road trip. We went to a small secluded village in a mountain town called Yogaville, where a bunch of spiritual driven people actually live. It was a community of people that follow the spiritual belief. She used to live there and wanted to go there to visit some old friends. I was extremely excited. And not to mention, I really liked this girl too. There was one problem, however. I had to work that day. I had to work that weekend. The weekend that she wanted to go. So I decided to end up quitting my job. I quit my job at the hotel so I could go there. I really loved that job at the hotel. And knew it probably wasn't the best idea of quitting. But I knew if I didn't go on this on his trip this weekend, I felt like I could possibly miss amazing opportunity that might lead to something that would be amazing, and I wouldn't know what I would have missed out and probably regret it. So I thought it was worth it. The trip was really intense. I really liked this girl a lot, and the attraction I had for her only grew by the hours when I was driving with her in the car. I talked to her a bit about myself. I was kind of nervous, but I held it together though. Once we got to Yogaville, we stayed at a place over the weekend. I had fun, but it was to a certain level. There was things about it I didn't like about the trip. She flirted with a lot of guys during the trip. She flirted with many guys, in fact. About 4 different people, from what it appeared. And one guy she really liked, and he was much younger than me. And I felt kind of jealous. But that wasn't so bad. But the worst part about it, the thing that bothered me the most, was she didn't even flirt with me, not even once. This bothered me mainly because I wasn't sure why. Even though I was a little nervous, I still felt like I socialized pretty well around her. I felt like I was being pretty much my best self at my time. I opened up and I felt like I wasn't acting awkward or anything. But yet she didn't find me attractive at all, but found a lot of the other people that she knew attractive and flirted with them instead. I was confused. I was always confused as to why a lot of women often didn't want to hook up with me or find attractive. I found that happen when I was on the rowing team, and I also found that happen with that gothic group that I used to sit with in high school. I knew I struggled socially, but I knew that I wasn't horrible at socializing either. People always told me I was good looking. If I was good looking, then why don't girls seem to find me attractive then? Why is it always that they end up flirting with other guys instead? The situation with Ken's roommate on this trip was just a simple reoccurring event that happened many times during high school and even at Kettering University. I would look my best and socialize my best, but women only seemed to flirt with other guys. Sometimes I would find girls would actually flirt and show interest first. However, after a while, they suddenly stopped seeming interested. And then I wouldn't know why. I would think back and try to assess the reasons why a lot of times women would find me attractive and then suddenly not, or the reason why some women would not find me attractive at all. But I never really seemed to find out any good theory. It always just seemed like I seemed to socialize my best. I dressed fine. I seemed good looking and was groomed and didn't seem to mess up when I talked or anything, but it just seemed like that, and I never really seemed to understand why.